to my second part of the conversation with Dr. Sherri Tenpenny. Thank you so much for coming back and doing this with me. We are going to dive right in and talk about the use of vitamins in regard to COVID and basically the human immune system, because I've been reading a lot in doing my research to speak with you and so many other people, that there are people out there talking about how they trust their immune system to do the work that it's meant to do. And they are being labeled as crazy and nutcases. And you've got the army of people that are saying, we have to stay home until we get the vaccine. Also, people, doctors, chiropractors, naturopaths, anybody that leans a little more to a natural way of healing, that has promoted the use of vitamins in regard to building their immune systems in, the fight against COVID, they have been labelled all sorts of names and censored on social media. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on it, because they were all in the bad books until about 3 weeks ago, a month ago. Dr. Fauci came out and said, well, I take vitamin D every day, and those that are lacking in vitamin D are more susceptible to COVID. So all these people that had been censored and labelled these horrible names are now sitting there saying, well, what's the deal?
Well, we've known from the beginning that very early on, when all this was happening and there were more sick people in the hospital, which that all kind of stopped in July, which we no longer have a pandemic. We have a planned controlled demolition of the human race. And we have a case-demic now. We don't have a pandemic anymore. We just have cases. But we heard early on about using zinc and high-dose vitamin C. There were actually high-dose vitamin C IV trials that were going on in China. We've known forever that vitamin D is the base molecule of your immune system that needs to support you. And I was saying early on, if you're gonna get tested for everything, anything, don't get tested for COVID. Don't get tested for SARS-CoV-2. Go get your vitamin D level tested. And make sure that your vitamin D level is somewhere between 80 and 100 in order for it to be therapeutic, to protect you from infections. I was saying get your zinc level tested, because they can do that. It's actually a blood test. And zinc as a mineral is a cofactor on more than 200 enzymes. And so enzymes are like the energy, the little energy factories in your body that make things happen. A cofactor is like the key that turns on the enzyme and makes it work. So zinc is important for over 200 enzymatic processes in your body. And when we started, remember when they used to talk about hydroxychloroquine? Well, they talked about hydroxychloroquine because it was a zinc ionospore, which means it would bind to the surface of the cell and drive zinc into the cell so that zinc could hook up with the enzymes and do its job. And so we know a lot of people, like the frontline doctors, or a lot of people, I mean, I prescribe hydroxychloroquine when it's necessary, and we talked about prevention and different things. And so when it became like such a big deal, someone else discovered that you could use quercetin. Quercetin is an antioxidant that actually does the same thing. It functions as a zinc ionospore, which the quercetin in combination with zinc, the quercetin drives the zinc into the cells. And so it gives you this natural holistic approach as a prevention to keep your body's enzymes functioning very well in the presence of zinc. Zinc should be on an average basis somewhere between 35 and 50 milligrams a day, every day. And if you start to get sick with a fever, cough, body aches, it doesn't have to be SARS-CoV-2. It could be any other, it could be influenza, it could be pneumococcus, it could be any other virus or bacteria. You want to double the amount of zinc that you're taking every day, double it, and take it daily until you start feeling better. Then drop back down to your baseline level. So D is the value of your D needs to be between 80 and 100. Zinc 35 to 50 a day unless you're feeling sick. Double it until you start feeling better. Take zinc with quercetin. Quercetin you can find at the health food store. You can find it online. It's 500 milligrams once a day. If you get sick, fever, cough, body aches, take 500 milligrams twice a day. Vitamin C, the best form of vitamin C is vitamin C ascorbates. It's the salt form, not citric acid, but vitamin C ascorbates is the best form. I really like to recommend powdered forms of that to people because you can give that at any age, from infants all the way up to seniors. It's readily absorbed. You can take it until what we call bowel tolerance, which means that you saturate your body with the vitamin C ascorbates until it starts to give you diarrhea or feel like you're getting kind of loosey stools. And you know, then that way all your cells are saturated and you can cut the dose that you're at by about 50%. Stay at that level till you get loosey-goosey stools again, cut that down to about 50% till you get back to like an average daily dose is about 3,000 milligrams a day. Now that needs to be tempered a little bit if you have a history of kidney stones, but other than that, you could take all of those things that we just talked about, anybody with any condition.
Now, Dr. Fauci is being lauded as the person to trust in regards to COVID. Like I said, he recently came out after all these doctors had been labeled as being crazy and not worth their salt for recommending vitamin usage. So he, in a conversation with Jennifer Garner in some podcast, talked about the use of vitamin D and vitamin C. So in that moment, everyone who'd been talking about it said everything we've been saying and everything we've been attacked for. But Jennifer Garner went on and said to him, you know, are there any other vitamins we should be taking? And he then proceeded to say that no other homeopathic remedy is any good and that they'll cause more damage than, you know, helping. I mean,
it never ceases to amaze me. And I've been doing this type of work now since 1996. So we're approaching 25 years I've been doing this. Thousands and thousands of patients. And it never ceases to amaze me how mainstream conventional medical doctors, Fauci doesn't even treat patients. I don't think he's treated patients in 35 years, maybe more. You know, he's been, you know, a political wonk and head of a department working for the government. So what the heck does he know about vitamins or homeopathy? And it never ceases to amaze me how political wonks, mainstream MDs and mainstream DOs, mainstream doctors can claim to be experts in something they know absolutely nothing about. How can you even make statements about other vitamins, about if you don't have any idea what the mechanism of action is of how they work in your system? Can you make statements like that homeopathy is going to harm you if you know absolutely nothing about homeopathy? So whenever I hear those things, that's why I was rather chuckling, because I feel like it's just absolutely, it's like I just want to scream at them. You know what? Your ignorance is showing. You know, shut your mouth now and save your face just a little bit, because you're going into an area that you know nothing about and you're claiming to be an expert on something you probably barely know how to spell.
So just to finish up on this particular topic, as I talked about at the beginning, there are people that are openly saying, I trust my immune system, I trust it to fight COVID. Yes, it can be scary, but I trust that my body is healthy enough and well enough to fight this virus off just like it would with the flu. And these people are being attacked. Are they crazy to trust their own immunity?
No, they're not crazy at all. Health is an inside-out phenomenon. Health is if you take care of your body, you know, and everybody sort of laughs at all these vitamins and minerals like magnesium and zinc and copper and all those things. But when doctors went to medical school, they learned something called the Krebs Cycle. And the Krebs Cycle is something where you take all the proteins, carbohydrates, and fats in your body, particularly the proteins and carbohydrates, and you run it through this cycle called the Krebs Cycle and turn it into ATP, turn it into energy. That's why we eat. And all of those intermediate steps along the way, where you take, you know, a sandwich, you know, you take, you know, the carbohydrates in the bread, and you take the meat and the mustard and the ketchup and all those things that you just ate in a sandwich and ate it and turn it into energy for your cells. all go through this process on a cellular basis called the Krebs cycle. If you ever bothered to pull out a biochemistry textbook and look at the Krebs cycle, you will see that each of those steps along the way require various minerals and nutrients and amino acids in order to turn the crank so that at the end comes out energy. So we know we need manganese, we need copper and zinc and magnesium and calcium and on and on and on. And so when doctors go to medical school, they are supposed to come out being experts in anatomy, physiology, and biochemistry. Biochemistry is what you eat, drink, and breathe, the vitamins you take. Physiology is how everything works, how you breathe, how you assimilate, how you digest, absorb, have your periods, have babies. That's physiology. And anatomy is muscles, organs, bones, right? You're supposed to be an expert in that. You're not supposed to be just a person who writes words on a piece of paper and hands them out for a living and makes lots of money doing it. That's what we have. So doctors have stopped being experts in the areas that they're supposed to be experts in. They rely on tests, x-rays and blood tests, and then they take a piece of paper and they write a word on it and hand it out for a living and make $1 trillion for the pharmaceutical industry. So if they really understood that, if they really understood each of those intermediaries for what they're supposed to be, sort of like when you go to a lawyer, he's supposed to know the law. When you go to the CPA, they're supposed to know taxes. When you go to a doctor, they're supposed to know something about the body. We've gotten so far away from that, Natalie, that we're just the doctors function kind of like glorified pharmacists or even glorified drug reps. I think sometimes the pharmacists know more than the doctors. And so we're at this place where we disparage all these things that you just said, like these people who say, I'm going to depend on my immune system. I'm not going to eat white sugar, white flour, white milk, white rice, going to keep out all the white stuff because all it does is it burns through minerals and does nothing for me. It just is empty calories. I'm going to eat real food. I'm going to eat as organic as I can afford. I'm going to eat grass-fed beef. I'm going to filter my water. I'm going to take really good care of this God-given thing called the body that functioned for 30,000 years before we had a pharmaceutical industry. And I'm going to be healthy from the inside out. We carry around with us several trillion viruses and bacteria everywhere we go, on the surface, internally inside of us, called our microbiome. But yet, if there's one little virus out there, one little bacteria that they could put the fear of God into us about and be terrorized, and they're only doing that for those bugs we can make vaccine for, then all of a sudden, all of the bacteria and viruses are bad. So can we take care of ourselves from the inside out? Absolutely. Should we? Even more so than that.
The thing that I found really interesting, just to finish this off, I've always known that vitamin D is so important. And I was filming something in Australia and I had to get a blood test. So while I was in there, I had to get some medical things signed. And the doctor said, look, we haven't run your bloods in a while. Let's just check all your levels. And the one thing that she said to me when I called back, everything was perfect. But my vitamin D levels in the middle of winter were at 85 or something. And she said, I don't even know how that's possible. And I said, I walk every day. I go outside. That is how I sort of center myself, keep myself focused. And knowing what vitamin D does, even before Dr. Fauci talked about taking it every day, it has amazed me through this, through all of 2020 and COVID, that they're saying stay inside, when we know that vitamin D is one of the most important things and that we can get from the sun.
It's almost, Natalie, like they've been working on this for 50 years, 50 years. WeForum.org will show you their playbook. They've been working on it for a long time. And it's almost like they had a panel of people that sat down and made a list of everything that was good for you, everything that was normal, everything that was all about what it meant to be a human being in terms of facial expression and touching and hugging, handshaking. It was like they made a list of every single thing that was good about being a human and about humanity. And then in this column beside it, they put the opposite word, like vitamin D is good for you, no sunshine. Oxygen's good for you, put on a mask. You know, you need to hug and touch people to be a living human being. Stay apart and don't touch anybody. It was like they made this whole list, and then they said, this is what we need to do to have the systematic destruction of the human race. And if we do it all over the world at the same time, they can run, but they can't hide. You can't like have a bad day in America and say, well, this is nonsense. I'm moving to the Seychelles.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't happen. So it's like, this is a planned, controlled demolition of what it means to be human, to move us into the whole artificial intelligence and the transhumanism movement. And so that it makes us no longer be necessary. It makes everybody be suspicious of each other, the social distance and all of these things, to make the human race not be necessary anymore.
Dr. Tenpenny, sorry about that. Thank you so much for joining me for part 2. We are coming back tomorrow with parts 3 and 4.